You don't want to constantly be doing easy climbs. So I guess part of me likes the struggle of walking the climb, doing it. But then at the same time, it's nice, especially in competition, sometimes it's nice to be like, oh, I did that climb pretty easily. Not necessarily because it was an easy climb, but because I climbed it well.
Hey y'all, I'm Ryan Devlin, and welcome to the Struggle Climbing Show, where I talk with elite climbers about their struggles and breakthroughs in training, nutrition, tactics, and mental game, and also what they're passionate about beyond the fight with gravity. I am in the utility/podcast closet right now, fighting a little bit of a cold, as you can probably hear in my voice, but the show must go on. Y'all need your content to help you level up your climbing and your training. So I am drinking my tea and doing the best I can to get this episode out on time. And it's a good one. Today, we are chalking up for a chat with Canadian comp crusher Guy McNamee. Guy, along with his twin brother Kinder, who's also a comp crusher, was born in Haiti, raised in Canada, and has been a force in boulder and lead competitive climbing throughout his teen years, which he just only recently moved beyond. Guy is a 7 times national champion, leveling up just a couple of weeks ago, timely episode alert, when he took the top spot as Canadian National Boulder Champion, and then, a few days later on his 20th birthday, took lead nationals as well. A happy birthday indeed. As you'll hear in our chat, Guy is very focused on his training, but he's also a pretty normal 20-year-old. He's working at Starbucks to pay the bills, he's messing around with his brother and his friends, and all the while, he's keeping his eye on the long game in this sport he loves so much. I love saying his name, and we should all get used to hearing it because the future is bright for Guy McNamee. Well, I thought I was going to send my proj last week, y'all, but I didn't. It's okay. It's okay. It is the closest I have ever gotten. I am now just one move from putting down the hardest grade I will have climbed, and all I need is a crisp day and sticky fingers. The weather, of course, I cannot control, but the sticky fingers I can, because I am chalking up with Friction Labs, who are a generous sponsor here. You guys know who else uses Friction Labs, Chuck? Past guests of the struggle, including Alex Magos, Drew Mack, and Matt Foltz, among others, and if it's good enough for them, it is damn sure good enough for us. What's in it, you may ask? Well, magic. But let's talk about what's not in it. Fillers, rosin, and drying agents, they don't mess with that stuff, which means it lasts longer and keeps your skin healthy. Y'all, Friction Labs loves helping climbers to perform at their best. You can try it risk-free to see for yourself. That is how psyched they are to help you level up. Enter code STRUGGLE20 at checkout for 20% off your first order. Chalk up less and climb more with Friction Labs. The official gear sponsor here at The Struggle is Petzl. Y'all, not only have I been using Petzl gear for many, many years now, but I gear my kids up in their harnesses and helmets as well. That is how much I trust and love their stuff. Right now, as y'all know, I'm making send goes on the 12D Sport Proj, which means shaving ounces by strapping on my Harundos harness with fuse frame technology. Guys, it's light, it's comfy, and it's pretty badass looking. So whenever I tie in, it immediately puts me into battle mode in my mind. They are a really cool company, and I'm so grateful to have their support here at The Struggle. If you're looking to level up your harness game, Petzl has a variety of options for different climbing styles and objectives. Check them all out at your local gear shop, or pop by petzl.com to access the inaccessible. And the official climbing nutrition sponsor of the Struggle Climbing Show is PhysiVantage. Y'all, I've been a paying customer of PhysiVantage for a couple of years now, and this stuff is truly the best of the best if you want to level up your training and your performance. I've been taking their supercharged collagen daily for tendon health, as well as their weapons-grade whey protein to support my training, and it has absolutely made a difference for me on the wall and in the gym, y'all. I've been able to train harder, my fingers have been able to stay healthier than they ever have in the past. And look, I'm just a weekend warrior, but when I see pros like Favia Dubik, Daniel Woods, Paige Clausen, and Taylor McNeil, along with more than 40 other top names in climbing, using PhysiVantage every single day, well, I know I'm in good company. If you're looking to join good company and get that extra edge in your training and your performance, then look no further. Hit that link in your show notes and use checkout code STRUGGLE15 to save 15% off any full-price nutrition order at PhysiVantage.com. I'm telling you, you're going to feel the difference. Swing by PhysiVantage.com to check it out. And lastly, a big thanks to the patrons of The Struggle, a community that is growing super fast. I just can't tell you how grateful I am for that. If you're not a patron, stick around after this interview to learn about all the cool stuff that you get for supporting the show. Thank you so much. All right, let's get to it. Now, just a little heads up that the audio connection here just wasn't quite as crisp on this one as we usually pride ourselves on here in the Struggle podcast/utility closet. Perhaps there were some big solar flares happening at the time of this interview. I don't know, but thank you for your grace on that as we paddle dino our way into this chat with Guy McNamee. You just had a birthday. Is it 20 years old now?
Yeah, 20. No longer a teenager.
No longer a teenager, winning nationals. Your future's bright, Guy, and I'm really excited to jump in. I love talking about the accomplishments. I love talking about the wins, but this is the Struggle Climbing Show. We also like to talk about the struggle. And before we get specific and talk about training and performance and these kinds of things, what's your relationship with struggle as a climber?
I guess for me, struggle is basically anything that doesn't really come naturally for you, and then something that you need to work towards. So I guess it's not necessarily like a bad thing, it's just that at first you struggle, so then you need to kind of work to it to improve.
Do you enjoy the struggle? Do you like to try to push through it, or do you seek ways around it? What's your method of handling struggle with climbing?
I feel like there's like definitely difference times, whereas like often it's like maybe like I'm struggling to do this climb, then it's like quite often I like the struggle as in like as climbers you don't want to constantly be doing easy climbs, meaning like, oh, this is easy. But then it's like, so I guess part of me likes the struggle of like walking the climb, doing it. But then at the same time it's nice, like especially in competition, sometimes it's nice to be like, oh, I did that climb pretty easily, not necessarily because it was an easy climb, but because I climbed it well. So I guess with that, it's kind of, I guess, a bit both. I guess a big one is asking yourself why you're doing this.
Yeah, that's a great question to ask yourself, especially, during the really hard times. So what is your answer to that question?
I guess in the long run, I want to become like the best climber that I can be. And I guess one thing I like to think about when maybe like I'm about to want to give up or something, how long is the discomfort of like doing one more move, or as in I feel like the discomfort rather than the disappointment of not trying right afterwards, because afterwards you're always like, I should have just went for it, and that lasts much longer than being like, oh, this is uncomfortable for a split second. So I think that's part of it.
Yeah, I love that, man. I love that. I'm often right now, especially thinking about that exact kind of trade-off, that dynamic that you just noted there, kind of the short-term discomfort for the long-term fulfillment or reward. I'm kind of like into the waning days of send season here at the Red, and holidays are coming up, and I've got friends meeting out at the bar, and every excuse possible to not continue kind of staying disciplined and training and staying on track with my nutrition. But I'm trying to hold that concept that you just shared there, in mind. Like, yes, momentarily it might be fun to just skip the gym session and, meet up with my friends or I don't know, just like hang out on the couch and watch a bunch of movies. But, I feel like I'd regret it, or I feel like if nothing else, the longer term satisfaction coming from like staying disciplined, sacrificing a bit, working hard, and then actually getting some results that I've been working so hard to achieve. Yeah, that's kind of what it's all about there. Of course, it's sometimes easier said than done, but I want to peel more into that. I want to hear more about how you see that philosophy, because I know you train and you work really hard with obviously fantastic results. So let's just dive in. Let's start with training, and we'll go from there. So training specifically, let's talk about struggle. Where do you struggle, or have you struggled with your training, Guy?
I think one thing that's like a big one for me and like a lot of kind of climbers is not necessarily the motivation or motivation to train, but also having the right, I guess, quality of training. As in, I feel like in Canada especially, sometimes it's kind of difficult to go to the gym and being like, oh, I want to work on coordination or slab, and then your gym has 1v2 slab, and you're like, oh, now what? Or like you want to work on coordination, like a big paddle down, where you're like, the gym's never going to set something like that because it takes up too much space. The public doesn't really do that kind of stuff, and I guess I feel like that's kind of something that I found quite difficult to exactly what you want to do, but how do you actually make that happen with what you're supplied with?
That's super interesting. I feel like for me, where I'm not a specialized climber like you are, I'm just like this average climber. Oftentimes I go to the gym and I'm able to seek out the things that I want to do that suit my style because they're there and they're in spades at V5 or whatever. There's rarely something at the gym that I can't find. It's more me choosing not to do the things that I'm weak at. So like I choose not to do the slab. I choose not to do slopers because I'd rather do overhung pockets. Whereas you show up, you specifically want to try something to hone a skill, to work something that you'll need in order to excel in your comps. And then it's just not there.
Mm-hmm.
And that is interesting because I would think some climbers have more access to that. I think about like the facilities in Salt Lake City where there's probably loads of paddle dyno, coordination type problems, whereas you don't have that. How do you manage that? I'm thinking about this specifically because one of the problems that you did in the most recent comp, the Canadian Nationals on boulder, was like a really rad looking paddle dyno across like 3 volumes.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
And it took you a bit. Like I could really see you working it out. It was really fun to watch. And so that's a perfect example. It seems like typically at your gym, you're not going to see a problem like that. So how would you train for something like that?
I guess it's interesting. When I go into the gym and train, I quite rarely actually try the problems that are set. Like there might be like 1 or 2 problems I'm like, oh, this actually looks good and something that I can actually work on to get better. But most of the time I find a hold here and like, oh, look, there's this hold. Maybe I can attempt to jump to here and do this kind of paddle. And it's quite a bit of kind of creativity and almost being your own route setter, which is like, in some ways, it's kind of nice because I guess it teaches you a little bit of like, oh, the movement, because you have to make it up yourself. And because you're making it up and sometimes the holds don't fit, often the moves don't go, where you're like, oh, this hold's just too bad, this movement's off. And I think one thing that I learned is it's okay to make climbs that don't go. It's like, oh, this climb is just, the movement's all wrong and it just doesn't go. But to look at it as even though this move can't go, I'm still learning from it. I'm doing the best that I can to get as close to doing it as possible. And I think doing that has been quite helpful. And also kind of route reading. Sometimes Kendra and I make up like imaginary problems where it's like, we're like, oh, imagine there's a toe hook here and you do this. Where is your body in space? What do you do? Like, we're like, okay, how much power do you need to use? Where are your hips? Where are your feet? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. I can see how that type of exercise not only would work out the body, but it would also work out the mind, this creativity and the problem solving. And so just so I'm understanding, this isn't on like, say, like a spray wall. You're just actually walking up to the set boulder problems, but it might be a V2 and a V7 and a V4 and a V6, all kind of slammed together in different colors. And then you're essentially picking and choosing certain holds from those overlapping problems to create what would be your own problem.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's really cool. I just recently heard Chris Hampton on the Power Company podcast specifically talking about how he doesn't understand why more boulderers don't go to the gym and make up their own problems, or more route climbers don't go to the gym and see a 510, a 512, and a 511 and pick and choose certain holds from it. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just because we're so used to going in and just grabbing the same color hold or something like that. But that sounds like a really worthwhile exercise. And I'm also really interested to learn a little bit more about about you're saying, sometimes you'll create a problem, maybe it's a V7 that you're trying to create or whatever it may be, but that it just doesn't go, but there's still value from that, you say. And so is the value in the physical, like you're still pulling hard, you're still trying hard, or is it in the mental in that you tried something new and you couldn't quite make it work, but there's still benefit from it? Where is the value, do you think, coming up with a problem that doesn't quite work?
I think for me, it's more mental than physical, just in the way of like you really kind of guess start to more understand kind of the movement and how your body works. Whereas like you're doing a climb, you're like, oh, I'm trying to do a toe hook catch. And like imagine like in reality the hold's actually like really, really small. And obviously that's not possible. But you're like, okay, let's try to kind of do the toe, jump to a hold and swing, and then try to imagine kicking this toe hold. So that's, you're not going to be able to toe hook this really small hold, but your body is in the right position. So if the hold was bigger, you'd theoretically be able to catch it.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. So you're meeting a struggle of not having comp style set boulder problems at your gym that suit what you want to work on by creating your own. And even if you can't fully create your own, you're still going through some of the positioning and some of the momentum and swings that would essentially kind of emulate some of those moves. So you are getting that training stimulus.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's really cool. And I also think it could apply to like myself or those of us who are predominantly outdoor climbers. And maybe there's a crux move on a boulder or on a route that you want to work on. You could go in and you could pick and choose what's on this wall. It doesn't have to be on a moon board. It can be on the same angle that you're working, vert or slab or cave. And it's 3 or 4 different routes that are set by the setters in that area. And you've got a whole spray wall essentially just in front of you there at the gym on the set problems. Not necessarily on the actual quote-unquote spray wall that's over in a different room, or at least it is in my gym. And then, but then you can pick and choose. You can actually simulate, you can recreate your crux by picking and choosing the holds that are as part of the set boulder problems there, like you're saying you're doing there with your brother often. And even if the move doesn't go or the route doesn't go, that doesn't matter because you're getting the training stimulus from it. So I love that, man. I think that's really, really wise advice for all of us who are listening right now. And what about rest? You're obviously young. You just turned 20. So relatively speaking, it's a pretty young training age. You may not need as much rest as myself or some of our listeners, but you're training really hard and you want to perform at peak. So how do you look at rest and how do you program your training accordingly?
I guess our only like full rest day is Wednesdays.
And that's a full rest day? Like you're not doing anything?
Like we don't do anything. Like we just like we stretch, watch movies, just like chill. And then all the other days, like we only climb like 5 days a week. But then I guess in terms of resting, sometimes it's good to be like, okay, what are you resting? And like, okay, like maybe like you can't do like 5 days in a row of moonboarding because then you'd like wreck your fingers. But you can do 1 day of finger strength, and then maybe the next day is like mostly slab and technique where you're not using so much of your fingers, and then the next day you can go back to finger strength. So that kind of means that maybe the middle day you're resting sort of in the way of like you're resting your fingers, and then another day might just be a conditioning day. So you're just like doing pull-ups and squats and things like that. So I guess rest can like, I guess in some ways like just like the full rest, you're not doing anything. And then there's like the rest of like you resting different parts of your body.
All right, Guy, let's talk about nutrition now. And are there any areas here where you've struggled or what are you most focused on with regard to your nutrition right now?
I guess I feel like right now I feel like my nutrition is like pretty good. I've gotten a handle on that. I feel like it was more when I was maybe a bit younger, like 13 or 14 maybe. Well, that was I guess like I was kind of skinny, I guess, back then, just like a skinny 13-foot who was just like climbing a lot. But I guess that was like around the time where I started bit more weightlifting and kind of training a bit harder. And for me to feel my body, I guess, change, I guess, in that way. So it's like getting bigger, like heavier. And then I guess I was like, maybe I weighed myself. I'm like, oh, I'm this weight, I'm like 110 pounds or something. And then I'm like, maybe like a month or two later, I'm like, oh shit, I'm getting heavier and heavier. And like, as at that young age, I guess wanted to almost like just stay at the same weight.
Yeah, especially for youth who are used to, yeah, just kind of floating up walls, being very, very light. I can understand. I think that's where some real struggles can come with disordered eating and that, especially kind of in the comp circuit.
Yeah.
For you, it sounds like you accepted that that was kind of the natural course of getting older and getting stronger. And ultimately, it obviously has benefited your climbing, right? To build muscle and to, as you go from a boy to a man, you're just getting bigger and stronger. Of course, you're going to weigh more, but you're going to be able to be much stronger than you've ever been.
Yeah.
Did you change your diet at all? Like as you got into your kind of later teen years, and now even we could just focus on kind of like the current. Like, what's your diet like? What are things that you have to do in order to stay on track with developing the muscle that you want or the tendon strength and that kind of thing?
Like, interestingly enough, I don't really do that much. Like, when I was younger, I stopped eating sugar for like 2 years. I think I was like maybe 9 to like 12 or something like that.
That's hard for a 9 to 12-year-old to give up
Mm,
sugar.
yeah, and it was just like stop doing Halloween and all that kind of stuff, and it's just like,
Wow.
and then like somewhere after that, I was like, I miss ice cream and cake, and I'm just gonna go back to it.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting experiment to run as a, 10-year-old. What do things look like now, Guy, with your diet specifically? And, I know you travel a lot for comps. Obviously, you're training super, super hard. Do you have a disciplined diet? Do you kind of prescribe to any sort of specific type of nutritional plan?
I'm really relaxed with it. Eat peanut butter and like meat, eggs, cheese. And I think as like a competitor who like travels a lot, I really like that since like some countries or they're like it's so hard to be like vegan or vegetarian. Like when I was in Korea, they have like meat or like meat substances in basically every meal. So I think to like have like a really restricted diet as a traveling competitor would be like I feel like it'd be more detrimental for me than beneficial. Because like I eat and like I guess I really just let my body tell me if it's happy or not. And I'm like, oh, I'm eating enough. I'm happy. I try to eat, I guess, not too much like red meat or anything, but like mostly like maybe chicken or like some tofu or peanut butter, that kind of protein. Yeah, I feel like
Which
maybe if I get older, I might have to maybe pay attention to it a little bit more. But right now, I'm pretty satisfied with it.
Yeah, you could probably just eat whatever you want right now. You're working so hard and you're young, so it's just like fuel is almost all fuel. What I'm
Mhm.
curious, what country that you visited has had the best meals? Which one can you not wait to get back to?
I really liked Korea. It was exotic. It was like definitely quite different than what I was, guess used to. Like the meals here, it was like lots of spices. As in, if you don't like spicy food, then maybe don't go there. But like, just quite like even they had like even the breakfasts were like they had like kimchi and like they were like fish eggs type stuff and noodles at the breakfast buffet, and it was definitely quite a different experience.
Oh yeah, man, they know how to put flavor into everything. But there's no bland food, I don't feel
No.
like in Korea. It's just got all the pow to it.
Mhm.
That's good, man. Well, is there a focus that you have like specifically on like a certain number of grams of protein that you're trying to hit a day or anything like that? Like, are you focused on macros or
I just listen to my body. As in like even like I'm not even like sure how many calories I eat a day. As in like I'm guessing maybe around 2,500 or something. That'd be like an estimate, but like I really don't know.
listen to your body, eat what you want, don't count calories, man? Guy, I like your diet, dude. I am now prescribing to the Guy McNamee diet. Let's talk about tactics now, Guy, and I really want to look at this through the comp lens. And specifically, you just won both boulder and lead at Canadian Nationals, which is awesome. And the lead climbing, it was kind of a surprise. It was kind of a surprise win for you. And I'm really fascinated with lead climbing tactics because you've got this huge route, you've got all sorts of different sections and moves, and you get a little time, I think, right, to view the route or view somebody climbing the route. But tactically speaking, you kind of have to step up, and it's all about flashing it. And that is very different than predominantly like the type of climbing that I do, or in outdoor climbing, where sometimes a flash is important, but more times than not, you can really take all the time you want to work things out. So tactically speaking, I'd love to hear how you look at lead climbing in the competitive circuit.
There's so many different tactics. As in, I used to try to memorize the whole route. Because yeah, so in competition, you get like a preview video of somebody doing the climb. So you kind of know all the moves. So you watch the person do the video and then you compare it to the climb itself. But I found that it was too much for me to like try to keep all that information, like 40 holds in my head. The first 10 moves you just do like really quickly and you're like, oh, okay, that was not that important. And I guess usually lead climbing is quite instinctual. So you're not really thinking that much about what you're doing. So it's better to just look at like the parts that scare you or intimidate you and kind of just basically looking at the crux moves and the parts that you're a little unsure about and just kind of, I guess, having a beta or two.
Right, that makes sense. So just like not getting overwhelmed with literally trying to memorize every move on the route, but utilizing that time to preview, to really focus in on the crux, on the rests, maybe some sections that you want to spend a little more time on. So going into it, you're going to want to have a plan. And then I guess what happens then after qualifiers?
Then semis and finals, we do, because it's 6 minutes to preview. So the first 2 minutes, we look at the route, and we look at it in like hyper speed, kind of just like moving our hands like really fast, and just like sometimes you might see people previewing this just like waving their hands around everywhere. The first 2 minutes we look at the route, just kind of basically getting an idea of like where the holds are and like what the moves are very quickly. And then the next 2 minutes we look at the sipping positions and the resting positions throughout the whole route. And then the last 2 minutes, we look at the cracks and the parts that maybe we didn't quite have time to fully understand.
Man, it's just super impressive how honed that skill can get. I can just imagine how beneficial that would be for like myself going outside and trying to on-site or flash a route where, you know, I'm able to take some time to look at something, or if it's a flash, like watch some videos of the route on YouTube and see where people are clipping, see where they're resting, and then be able to internalize that. Typically for me, I'll do that and then I'll get out there and it just all goes out the window after I pull the first couple moves. But it sounds like for you, you know, you've really honed that skill of being able to focus on what matters most. And I like that, man. I think there's more crossover to comp climbing and outdoor climbing than maybe there seems at first glance. And this is like a perfect example of that, something that I'm going to practice a little bit more, just even when I'm at the gym. All right, Guy, let's paddle dyno our way into the mental game chapter here. And you kind of mentioned a couple things throughout our chat here. One was specific to lead and just like a fear of falling that comes with lead climbing. I want to peel back on that struggle. You also had a post recently about a boulder that you were working on, a boulder problem in a comp, where you said there were kind of two ways to do it. There was the right way and there was the safe way. And it looked like there was a bit of an exposed body position that you were putting yourself in where the fall could be a little bit awkward. So yeah, let's talk about maybe falling as our first step into the mental game here.
I guess there's like two kind of aspects where it's like quite often when you're climbing or doing a dyno, it's mostly in your head. I guess the scariness, where it's like usually the route setters and the mats and the ropes are going to make sure that you're safe. So with that aspect, it's mostly just about repetition. You know that consciously you're not going to die, but then the subconscious part of your brain I guess, doesn't get that message. So for it to kind of get known, you almost just need to like do it over and over and over again. So like if you're afraid of dinoing, which is a common thing, you just need to like do it a lot.
Yeah, just like that exposure therapy type thing, which is something that I implemented, myself for a fear of falling, especially when I went from trad climbing on slab to, really steep climbing in sport was a little bit of that exposure therapy. Is it harder though, or is there more pressure when, there's just a huge audience watching when the stakes are higher?
I guess one thing, like sometimes you feel pressure from other people. The pressure from other people is never going to be as much as the pressure that you put on yourself. I guess it's almost like a weird kind of case where it's like the more you want it, the more stressed you're going to be.
Oh, for sure. I feel that on my climbs as well. Like, whether I'm at the gym or outside, I can't even tell you how many times I've been surprised that I've sent something because I just didn't care. Like, I didn't either think it would go, or maybe I was just, you know, fooling around and didn't care if I sent or not. And is that kind of what happened with you most recently when you won the lead nationals?
The lead, I obviously it would have been nice to do well, but I guess I wasn't expecting to since that wasn't my main training focus. And I guess that was helpful for me, just to be like going into it, just being like, oh, have fun, chatting with boys and chilling. But then it's like, you need to train really hard. And I guess the harder you train and the more like important the comp is, the harder it's going to be to kind of guess find the balance of like just being okay and calm. And one thing I like to, I guess, do is when there's like a really big comp, looking at each, I guess, reality. Where it's like, okay, let's say you fall apart, you don't do as well as you wanted to. What's the worst?
Like what's the worst thing that could happen if you didn't perform, like if you didn't do it?
Let's say I didn't make semis. That would be sad. It really sucks. And then you're going to be sad. But there's always another comp that you can attempt to redeem yourself. Every competition adds to the pyramid and strengthens it, gets it bigger, taller, and just more steady. So I feel like in that way, no one competition is going to destroy the pyramid of like confidence or success.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's an interesting way of looking at things. It's kind of a new perspective because oftentimes us climbers, we talk about building a pyramid in terms of grades, right? You do so many V2s before you start working on V3s, and then you build a base of those, and then you kind of build the pyramid up to V4s. And the pyramid is always just like thought of in terms of grades. But what you're talking about here is it's different. It's kind of goes beyond that. It's a pyramid of experiences, I guess, right? Like they could be positive or challenging. It could be a comp win or not making finals. That's still a block that is building that pyramid, right? It's like these collection of experiences that will take you to new heights in your career. I think that's kind of a cool perspective, Guy, to look at it. And that's a really good way for us actually to transition, I think, into our last chapter here, which is talking about what comes next. You're building this pyramid now of experiences. Your career is red hot. I mean, you're performing very, very strongly. So where do you see yourself in a year, in 5 years, 10 years?
It's kind of difficult to, I guess, look into like way into the future. But like, I guess I want to be almost like a big like competitive climber and like hopefully like make that almost like a career kind of. And then, yeah, for me, climbing is definitely one of like my main likes. So I think it's like, it's definitely one of the main things that I feel defines me. So I guess looking into the future, 5 years, I hope I'm like still climbing, improving.
Yeah, that's exciting. Well, I mean, there's such an exciting road ahead for you, and you're incredibly dedicated. So I'm excited to continue to follow along. At the same time, you're a regular guy who's climbing and performing at the highest levels, but also starting to create just, a normal life, right? You're working at Starbucks, you're paying the bills. Yeah. What is it like? What do you do for fun outside of climbing?
I guess like I like writing. My brother and I are like writing a lot.
What kind of writing do you all do?
We like kind of doing like fictional writing, like kind of story writing, novel kind of writing, and it was kind of something that we've been doing kind of for kind of a while. We used to like write little novels, kind of just. And then it was kind of something that a few years ago we, I guess, started kind of picking up again. So we've kind of looked at some of the old things that we've written and almost like making like newer, better editions of them. So that's definitely something that we're quite into.
It's the opposite of getting out and trying hard as a rock climber, is sitting down and using your mind to tell stories. That's cool. My wife is a writer, so that's great that that's an interest of your all's. What about getting outside? I know your focus is very much on comp climbing, and it's highly specialized, so there probably isn't a whole lot of crossover there. But are there certain areas or climbs that you've got on the wish list that you're excited to get out and do and try when the time is right?
Yeah, as in I feel like this year I didn't really get much of a chance to climb outdoors. I think I climbed a little bit at the beginning of this year, and then it'd be nice to hopefully next year, after like maybe some World Cups and things, have maybe like a few weeks of time of rest before I start training for the next year again, to like go outdoors with some friends and try some old projects. I feel like that's the really cool thing about outdoor climbing, is the climb's always there, and it's quite easy to see improvement. You come back a year or two later, and then you're like, I can get this climb now. Wow, nice. And I feel like I've made quite a bit of strides in like finger strength and kind of just like overall climbing. So it'd be nice to be able to try go outdoors and try some of the things again.
That is an interesting thing to think about that I don't often think about, but the hard climbs that you get on are gone after a weekend. They're set and they just disappear, but for the videos of them. So unless you're going to be very dedicated to find somebody to reset a problem that stopped you, it's hard to get redemption, but it's easy to get redemption on outdoor climbs. You train, you come back, and you give it hell. What advice would you have for listeners out there who, some of our younger listeners who are really psyched on comp climbing and that world? For yourself, you've been in it for quite some time now, a decade about. You're basically an old veteran when it comes to comp climbing. For people who are interested in that, and even if it's just on an amateur basis, just doing local comps at the local gym, what takeaways do you have, or what advice do you have for people who are psyched on that style of climbing?
Try to, when you compete, go into competition, sometimes it can be intimidating to be like, oh, now I'm being ranked and competing against other people. But most climbing communities, they're extremely friendly, and sometimes it's almost not like you're competing. It's almost like you're just kind of, especially youth climbers who are just like beginning, it often can just be like, oh, sharing beta and kind of having fun with it. And I think as a youth competitor, almost don't try to treat it too much like a really big competition, and just treat it as like going on some like really fun, quite different problems than you normally would in training or outdoors, and just like having that experience, being a part of the community, just having fun. And I think that's something that I did quite a bit. Like when I was first competing, it almost didn't feel like a competition. I was just like going there. I was like, cool, fun climbs. I can't wait to try them. And then progressed, I definitely treat it more seriously. But when you begin, you don't need to treat it that serious.
It's good advice for people who are starting, as well as even people who are at the top of the game like you are. Sometimes it's good to not treat it too seriously. We can just go out there and have some fun. Well, look, Guy, congratulations. I mean, happy birthday, taking top spots in Boulder and Leeds at Canadian Nationals. The sky's the limit for you, man. I'm really grateful for your time here today, and I cannot wait to see what this next year is going to hold for you.
Thank you.
Thank you again for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And that wraps up our chat with a rising star in the comp world, Guy McNamee. What did you all think of the combo? Let us know. You can find us on Instagram, at Guy McNamee, at Ryan Devlin Outside, and at The Struggle Climbing Show. Now, in a second, I'll share my takeaways, as I always do, and hook you up with some swag. But first, let's support the brands that are supporting the struggle. Shout out to PhysiVantage for being the official climbing nutrition sponsor of The Struggle. Try their supercharged collagen and weapons-grade whey protein if y'all are looking to stay strong, healthy, and train at your peak. I personally love this stuff, as I do all of their science-backed products. Look for it in Europe from the Epic TV online shop, and here in the US at select gyms, and of course at PhysiVantage.com. Hit that link in your show notes or use code STRUGGLE15 at checkout for 15% off. Also, the psych is high for the ultralight, strong, and comfy Harundos harness by Petzl, which is what I'm sporting as I make my Sengos on my proj, which I know is going down next session, or the following, or maybe in the springtime. You know what? Who knows? I don't care. It's fun to take whips, and my Petzl gear keeps me comfy and safe. You guys swing by your local gear shop to check out the Harundos or all of the other harnesses that Petzl makes. Access the inaccessible at petzl.com. And lastly, check out Friction Labs, y'all. It's what top athletes use and trust for dependable, long-lasting grip. My personal favorite is their Gorilla Grip, which kind of has these little chunks in there that I meditatively crush up as I'm resting en route. They got a flavor for everybody, so just pop over to frictionlabs.com and use code STRUGGLE20 for 20% off your first order. Chalk up less and climb more with Friction Labs. All right, so the big takeaways for me here as a predominantly outdoor sport climber is that I can use comp training and tactics to help me level up in my own style of climbing. I am especially psyched to implement Guy's suggestion of creating my own routes from the set problems at my gym. I definitely personally have the habit of just kind of following the set problems and routes that are there, but I am going to work my mind as well as my body by creating unique moves and cruxes from anything on the wall. I'll let you know how that goes, and if you do the same, share your video and tag me and Guy on Instagram so that we can check it out. Well, that clips the anchors on this episode. Muchos besos to all of the new patrons out there. This community is growing so fast, I really can't believe it. I'm so grateful. Whether you're here for the pro clinics, like our recent mind-blowing masterclass on training finger speed with Tyler Nelson, or maybe you're here for like the cool swag, or just because you want to support me with some caffeine or some beer as I grind away here in the podcast/utility closet, thank you for doing it. I have got some more really cool stuff coming your way soon here, so if you're not a patron, would you consider becoming a patron? I'm hustling pretty hard here. I'd be really grateful for your support if you have the means to spare a few bucks each month. I promise you that I will spend it wisely on more caffeine and more beer so that I can keep delivering great content to help you train and climb smarter, harder, and happier. Swing on over to patreon.com/thestruggleclimbing-show to check it all out. Thank you. I love you. The Struggle is carbon neutral in partnership with the Honnold Foundation, who are partnering with marginalized communities to expand equitable solar energy access. Y'all, this is an organization and a team who are highly efficient, and your support will make the world a better place. Cut them a year-end tax-deductible donation if you can, or become a monthly donor like me, and that money will make numerous projects happen, including a rooftop solar system to Limitless Horizons y Chile, which is a STEM-focused school for indigenous girls in Guatemala. How rad is that? Pop on over to honnoldfoundation.org to learn more and to take action. Lastly, The Struggle is a proud member of the Plugtone Audio Collective, a diverse group of the best, most impactful podcasts in the outdoor industry. This show was produced and hosted by me, Ryan Devlin. The struggle makes us stronger. Let's climb hard and do good things in the world.